Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Georgia, prosecutors have informed Rudy Giuliani he's the target of a criminal investigation into interference in the 2020 election. Giuliani is scheduled to appear before a special grand jury in Atlanta tomorrow, where he faces questions about his efforts to keep former President Donald Trump in power. Giuliani led Trump's attempts to overturn the results of Joe Biden's victory in Georgia by more than 12,000 votes. Giuliani repeatedly cited baseless conspiracy theories and led an unlawful effort to put forward an alternate slate of presidential electors. Meanwhile, a federal judge in Georgia has denied a bid by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham to quash a subpoena ordering Graham to testify to the grand jury in Atlanta. Fulton County prosecutors want Senator Graham to explain the reason for two calls he placed just after the 2020 election to Brad Raffensperger, Georgia's Republican Secretary of State. Raffensperger told reporters after the calls Graham had hinted he should throw away ballots from areas where Biden likely got more votes.
He asked if the ballots could be matched back to the voters, and then I got the sense it implied that then you could throw those out. And he really would look at the counties with the highest frequent error of signatures. Well, it's just an implication that look hard and see how many ballots you could throw out.
South Carolina Republican Senator Graham has promised to appeal the order compelling him to testify in court, arguing he's shielded under the Constitution's speech or debate clause. The Justice Department's asked a federal judge not to unseal a sworn affidavit used by the FBI to recover 11 sets of secret government documents from Trump's home in Florida. The affidavit was the basis of an application that convinced a judge to sign off on the warrant used by federal agents in their search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence on August 8th. In a federal court filing, prosecutors said the affidavit contains highly classified material and sensitive information about witnesses, and that its release would compromise the continuing investigation. Voters in Alaska and Wyoming head to the polls today for primary elections. In Wyoming, pro-Trump primary challenger Harriet Hageman is poised to unseat incumbent Congressmember Liz Cheney amidst backlash over Cheney's role as one of two Republicans on the House January 6th committee. In Alaska, former governor and 2008 Republican vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin leads a crowded field seeking to fill Alaska's lone U.S. House seat, which had been held by Don Young for nearly half a century before his death in March. Meanwhile, Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski faces 18 Republican primary challengers, including pro-Trump candidate Kelly Tshibaka. Last year, Murkowski was one of just 7 Republican senators who voted to convict then-President Trump after the House impeached him over the January 6th Capitol insurrection. The Biden administration's ruled out releasing roughly $7 billion in foreign assets held by Afghanistan's central bank on U.S. soil. That's according to the Wall Street Journal, which reports Biden's decision not to return the funds came after he ordered the assassination of al-Qaeda's leader in Kabul. This comes as the United States warns a staggering 95% of Afghans are not getting enough food, with that number rising to almost 100% in female-headed households. Earlier this year, Democracy Now! Spoke with Masuda Sultan, Afghan-American women's rights activist.
Human Rights Watch agrees with us. The head of the UN agrees with us. The head of the International Rescue Committee, David Miliband, agrees with us. You talk to just about every humanitarian organization, any economist, they will tell you that a central bank's reserves belong in the central bank. But instead, we have just decided that Afghanistan cannot have its central bank reserves, that economy will now be crippled. We just knocked the legs out of it, and the humanitarian crisis will just grow and grow. Afghanistan will be an aid-dependent country.
Masuda Sultan is founding member of Unfreezing Afghanistan. Ukraine's military says an elite unit operating behind enemy lines was responsible for a massive explosion at a Russian ammunition depot earlier today in the Russian-annexed province of Crimea in southern Ukraine. Video shows a huge fireball and smoke rising over a village in northern Crimea near the site of the blast. Russian state media described the explosion as sabotage that damaged civilian infrastructure. This follows another explosion last week at a Russian air base in Crimea, which destroyed as many as 9 Russian warplanes. Elsewhere, a massive United Nations chartered ship carrying more than 23,000 metric tons of wheat has left a port in southern Ukraine bound for Ethiopia. It's the first shipment of food from a Black Sea port in Ukraine since Russia invaded more than 6 months ago. In Kenya, William Ruto has been declared winner of a highly contested presidential election. Kenya's Electoral Commission says Ruto defeated the former prime minister and opposition leader Raila Odinga by a narrow margin, getting just over 50% of the vote. Ruto has been deputy president of Kenya since 2013. His party, the Kenya First Coalition, has also won a majority of seats in Kenya's Senate. At least 4 Kenyan election commissioners said they did not support the results due to the opaque nature of the vote count, as diplomats and international election officials were removed from the tallying hall right before Ruto's victory was announced Monday. Ruto will serve as Kenya's 5th president since its independence from Britain in 1963. He addressed the East African nation Monday.
There is no room for vengeance. There is no room for looking back. We are looking into the future.
In Saudi Arabia, women's rights defender Salma al-Shahab has been sentenced to 34 years in prison over her advocacy. It's reportedly the longest sentence ever given to a Saudi women's rights activist. Al-Shahab was initially sentenced to a 6-year prison term over tweets she posted critical of Saudi Arabia's treatment of women. But an appeals court last week increased the sentence to 34 years behind bars and banned al-Shahab from leaving the kingdom for an additional 34 years. Human rights advocates warn of worsening conditions for Saudi women as Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman intensifies his crackdown on dissent. Saudi Arabia's state-controlled oil company has broken its own record after posting a profit of $48.4 billion for the second quarter of 2022. It's the largest quarterly profit ever posted by a publicly traded company, coming as Russia's invasion of Ukraine helped push oil prices up. In Germany, police used batons, pepper spray, and water cannons to attack about 150 climate justice advocates who staged a nonviolent sit-in protest Saturday on a rail supply line leading to the harbor in Hamburg. The protesters are seeking to halt construction of new liquefied natural gas terminals along Germany's coast. This comes as German households face spiraling fuel costs that could see them spend hundreds of euros more per year to power their homes. This is protest spokesperson Charlie Dietz.
In Germany, too, the energy crisis is hitting those hardest to contribute the least, crisis in which many bear the cost, while the few corporations pocket billions in profits. It is explicitly not an energy crisis. It is a capitalist distribution crisis.
Lawyers for Julian Assange have filed a lawsuit against the CIA and its former director, Mike Pompeo, charging they spied on U.S. lawyers and journalists who met Assange while he was living in the Ecuadorian embassy in London while in political asylum. The lawsuit is being filed as Britain prepares to extradite the WikiLeaks founder to the United States, where he faces up to 175 years in prison for violating the Espionage Act by publishing classified documents exposing U.S. war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. Later in the broadcast, we'll speak with the lead attorney behind the lawsuit. Here in New York, another person has died at the Rikers Island jail complex, the 12th so far this year. The New York Times reports Riccardo Cruciani was found Monday morning sitting in a shower area with a sheet around his neck. The 68-year-old died about an hour later. His attorney had reportedly alerted Rikers officials to put him on suicide watch. Cruciani was a former neurologist who was convicted 2 weeks ago of sexually assaulting and raping at least 6 of his patients. And in California, thousands of unionized mental health care providers in multiple cities have gone on strike, demanding the country's largest nonprofit health care organization provide better care to people who desperately need services. Kaiser Permanente serves some 9 million people in California. According to the Union of Healthcare Workers, Kaiser has just one mental health provider for every 2,600 patients, forcing people to wait months for an appointment. Union members are also accusing Kaiser of violating treatment clinical guidelines and California state laws. The strike comes after a year of negotiations between the National Union of Healthcare Workers and Kaiser, which has rejected union proposals to expand the workforce and improve access to care. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.